Do you agree with those who say that belief is a matter of blind faith? No. When one says, yeah, it's a matter of blind faith, it's a matter of faith, basically, we have accepted the atheist claim that their disbelief in God is logical and our belief in God is illogical. It's just based on blind faith. It is not provable. Their approach is logical based on the other questions that we mentioned. However, the truth is that belief in God is logical and disbelief in God is illogical. It's the complete opposite. And we should have no doubts in our hearts that this is true. If we know our Lord, then we have no doubt about this. We can start by saying, if atheism was really logical, then the fathers of logic should have been atheists. Logic is traced back to the Greeks. And the leading philosophers amongst the Greeks, Plato and Aristotle, both of them believed in God. And they argued for the necessity of belief in God logically. Because as philosophers, logic was held on the highest position, highest status, to be able to logically present things. So, Plato's argument was the argument from design, that design indicates a designer. That is logical. That's what we see around us all the time. When we walk on the beach and we see a footprint in the sand, we don't stop and reflect how amazing it was that the sea washed ashore, sunk into the sand, and made a footprint. For the atheists, that's what they say. It's possible. The sea could sink in the sand and create what would appear to us to be a footprint. But that is not logical. Yes, it could. It is not impossible. But the greatest likelihood is that when we see that footprint, we know that somebody, another human being, stepped there. That's what we conclude. Sir Isaac Newton, on one occasion, had an instrument which was a means of demonstrating the movement of the planets around the sun. You had the sun in the middle, the different planets, and when you turn this crank, then the planets moved around the sun, at different paces, etc. And one of his atheist friends stopped by to visit him, and he asked him, when he saw it, he was really amazed. This is a wonderful gadget. He said to him, "Who made it?" And so Isaac Newton responded to him saying, "Nobody. It just accidentally fell into that shape." The man looked at him and said, "Don't be silly. Don't be silly. Who made it?" He said, "Is what I said any more silly than what you say about the real world of the planets going around? You said it's all by accident. Isn't that even more foolish? As you wouldn't accept it on that small scale, which is so obvious, how are you going to accept it on that huge scale? So, the concept that design indicates a designer, this is a natural concept. Human beings function according to it all the time. But atheists say no. Design doesn't necessarily indicate a designer. So, if you take a bucket of paint and you throw it on the wall, it might splatter on the wall and it might look like a hand, or a foot, or a head, you know. It can take forms which look similar to. Just like sometimes you look up at the clouds in the sky and sometimes a cloud seems to take the shape of a head, or a hand, or a foot. So they say. So we say to them, well, if we put in all of the colors in a bucket, then we throw that bucket of colors against the wall. Do you think it is possible that we could come out with a Mona Lisa? They would say, yeah. Yes, it's possible. Common sense, for people who live in the real world, common sense tells us no. No way. No matter how many times you throw this bucket of colors against the wall, you are not going to come out with a Mona Lisa. It's not going to ever happen. The first time you throw it will be no different from the billionth time that you throw it. But according to them, no. If you keep throwing, keep mixing and throwing and mixing and throwing, one time it can happen. But as I said, common sense says no. The example they like to give for this is that if you put 100 monkeys in a cage and you give them all typewriters and pieces of paper and let them beat away at the keys with their heads and their feet and elbows and jump up and down, one of them will type out for you the whole Quran, giving them, of course, Arabic typewriters, not the English ones, right? They will type out for you the whole Quran from Fatiha to Nas, from beginning to end. Or the Bible from Genesis to Revelations. One of them will. Given an unlimited amount of time, if they just keep at it, one of them is going to do it. And they'll even put some numbers to it. They'll tell you it is, the chance of it occurring is 1 to the minus trillion. But it's still one. But common sense, logic and reason tells us, no, it's not going to happen. So that's why we say, they are the ones who are illogical. They are calling on something which the human mind does not accept. It goes against all reason, all human experience. It goes against it. But that's what they hold on to. Aristotle, on the other hand, his argument was that the infinite regression of the cause and effect chain cannot possibly be. Meaning, that question, if everything has a creator, then who created God? Meaning, you go back. This was created by that one, and that one's created by the other one, that one's created by the other one. Keep going back and back to infinity. Or this God created, and then another God created that God, and another God created that God, and back to infinity. He said, no, that cannot be. There has to be a beginning point. Because saying that there is no beginning point, in other words, it's back to infinity, I mean there is no beginning point, is the same as saying it never started. Reality is that we are here now. Our existence is proof that there had to be a beginning point. And for that beginning point to take place, then the one that precipitated, caused that beginning to take place, had to himself or itself be without creation. Otherwise, it just falls back in that chain. There had to be one who was uncreated to start the process going. Otherwise, no beginning. So that was Aristotle's argument. The Quran uses both arguments. The most common argument, of course, is the argument from design. أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Would you not reflect on how the camels were created? And the whole of creation around us. Just reflecting on how it's each element of creation, the complexity that is found there. When scientists go and look on the most microscopic level, what do they find as they take things apart and look inside? Take things apart and look inside, keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. What do they find? They find order. Order all the way. If they go to the macroscopic, go the other way, out towards the sun, the planets, the universe, what do they find? Order. Everywhere, order. Design, order. It is not the product of chaos. So the claim that everything was a product of accident, the Big Bang, boom, and here we are. This is like saying somebody drops an atomic bomb on a junkyard. You know a junkyard where they have all the bits and pieces of cars? You can go down and get used pieces. Junkyard full of bits and pieces. You drop an atomic bomb in the junkyard and out rolls a Rolls Royce. Engine humming, door open, you just have to get in and drive away. This is what they're saying. Reality is that these bombs create chaos. They break things apart. They don't create things. So the logic that this world and its contents were created by God is so strong. It is so obvious that the vast majority of human beings believe in God. That's reality. Wherever you go in the world, whenever you go back in history, you find peoples believing in God. Those who don't believe in God, they are a very small number. They are exceptions. And even in the countries where we know that atheism, for example, became the order of the day, like Russia. Russia, where atheism was taught, it became the state religion. Denial of God's existence was a requirement for you to be promoted to have any position of note. Yet, once the Soviet Union fell apart, recent surveys of Europe with regards to the percentages in different countries that believe in God put Russia right up at the top. Some 80% of Russians believe in God's existence. What happened? They had been indoctrinated from the time of, Lenin, Stalin, all those years. A century. Yet, as soon as the state apparatus was dismantled, the people reverted naturally back to belief in God. I remember speaking to a Chinese who had converted to Islam from communism, and I asked the person, how? I mean, you were indoctrinated, Mao's thought, the Red Book, Cultural Revolution, all this stuff. How can you come to Islam? What happened? She said, actually, I always believed there was a God, but I just kept it inside. You want to get ahead, you want to do anything, get into university to study, whatever. These things you just don't express. So once there was relaxation, then I could go and explore and find for myself what was in fact the religion of God. That's the reality. So, the fact that the vast majority of human beings believe in God is itself evidence for the existence of God.